be tricky. It can humanly be frustrating sometimes, but recognizing that God still is in control. And I think it is a very real need that we as this church have. And I think we can boldly go before the throne of the Lord and just ask for really, I think we can be urgent with timing here. We really do have something that is somewhat just held up by human reasoning in a lot of ways, and would really be a miracle for it to go through quickly. But that's what we need, and I think we can boldly pray for that. So just asking that the Lord's hand would be upon it, not that we humanly have to force it and make it happen, but that the Lord would give us wisdom, whether it's phone calls that can be made or giving. Most of it is in the hands of another company, but really just praying that the Lord would give wisdom in the middle of all of that to see that happen soon. I know we could really use that building back. It would be a great blessing. And so looking forward to that. Appreciate Tom mentioning that here as we're praying this morning. We're going to go to Luke chapter 5. When Pastor Swanson's here, he carries on with where he left off. When I'm here, I carry off where I left off. So Luke chapter 5. Just picking up where we left off the last time we did Sunday school together. Who remembers what happened there in the beginning of Luke? What story did we look at there in the beginning of Luke chapter 5? Yes. Okay, yep, there was that going on. And then specifically, Peter being called, being asked that he would join, and the others there as well that were with Peter. And so we're going to go looking here at some of the next verses. We ended at verse 11, so we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 5, and we'll go from 12. We'll see how far we get here today, but I want everyone just to start with reading personally. Just looking there at Luke chapter 12. We're going to most likely go down to verse 32 at looking at some of these stories. We see a little bit of Jesus' ministry going on here. And I'm just going to give a little bit of moment of silence just for you to look at that over personally. And then I'll read through it. But just reading and rereading the passage here, asking the Lord to help us see some things that might be beneficial to our week and be beneficial as we look through the passage, and just asking Him to lead us here in this time. So go ahead and be reading it there quietly, and then I'll go ahead and read here in a little bit, going through the whole passage as well, from 12 down to 32. I'm going to read here starting verse 12. It came to pass, when he was in a certain city, behold, a man full of leprosy, who seeing Jesus fell on his face and besought him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And he put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately the leprosy departed from him. And he charged him to tell no man, but go and show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing, according as Moses commanded, for a testimony unto them. But so much the more went there fame abroad of him, and great multitudes came together to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness, and prayed, And it came to pass on a certain day, as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was present to heal them. And behold, men brought in a bed a man which was taken with a palsy. And they sought means to bring him in and to lay him before him. And when they could not find by what way they might bring him in because of the multitude, they went upon the housetop and let him down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus. And when he saw their faith, he said unto him, Man, thy sins are forgiven thee. And the scribes and Pharisees began to reason, saying, Who is this which speaketh blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone? But when Jesus perceived their thoughts, he answering said unto them, What reason ye in your hearts? Whether it is easier to say, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Rise up and walk? That ye may know that the Son of Man hath power upon earth to forgive sins, he said unto the sick of the palsy, I say unto thee, Arise, take up thy couch, and go into thine house. And immediately he rose up before them, and took up that whereon he lay, and departed to his own house, glorifying God. And they were all amazed, and they glorified God, and were filled with fear, saying, We have seen strange things today. And after these things he went forth and saw a publican named Levi sitting at the receipt of custom. And he said unto him, Follow me. And he left all, rose up, and followed him. Levi made him a great feast in his own house, and there was a great company of publicans and of others that sat down with them. But their scribes and Pharisees murmured against his disciples, saying, Why do ye eat and drink with publicans and sinners? Jesus answering said unto them, They that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. So there from 12 down to 32, just want to discuss, what are you seeing from this passage? What are some things that stand out to you as we read through this passage here in Luke chapter 5? Yes.
Well, the healing of the leper, it shows because leprosy was highly contagious.
Yes.
It shows Jesus' compassion because he reached forth and he touched the man and he healed him. And then he told him to go to the priest
Mm-hmm.
to make the offering.
Yes.
As if he was
Yep.
leprosy.
Yes. Jesus' compassion. Miss Hunter is pointing out here the compassion we see that Jesus has here for the leper. Here, as Jesus was going along his way, probably wasn't convenient for his day. Sure, he had plenty of things on his list, just like we all can. All have things to do. Jesus was a productive person. He was a carpenter. He knew what it was. Sometimes I think, well, he just had all this time to minister to people. I think you can get this idea that this is just what he did. This is what he was paid to do. But really, he took time out of his way. Each of these stories, Jesus stopped in what he was doing. And obviously, yes, ministering to people was his goal. But there are some of these, especially in the way of this leper. He was headed somewhere, and the leper kind of imposed maybe what his schedule was. And you see Jesus willing to stop and take some time here for the leper. Good. Anything else that's observed here in this passage? Yes, Mr. Schroeder?
He was very, very busy ministering to all the people, but he still had the need to withdraw himself and spend that time in prayer.
Yeah. Taking time for prayer. Stop to do that. Isn't that amazing, thinking through that here he is, the Son of God, and yet still taking time for prayer. You would think of anybody, he doesn't need to take time to do that. It's your time. It's time to minister. Get up. Go. Yet you see him withdrawing to the wilderness. You see this many times over and over in his ministry, the aspect of either teaching his disciples to pray, but you see his disciples realizing how important it is to him. Good. Anything else? Yes, Chris. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we don't know, we aren't given much of the story and the background here, but this man was thankful for those that were in his life and in his community for their efforts. And we do know just clearly from the story that the man himself also had faith. You see, we just know that from recognizing that Jesus offering here, man, thy sins be forgiven thee. The man himself also had faith that Jesus could do this. And but he also had some really good friends, and that is an important part. What kind of friend are we in regards to those around us? Good. Anything else? Anything else seen and observed here in this passage? Yes. Pharisees were trying to figure him out, weren't they? Yeah. Multiple times it points here in the verses, Pharisees began to reason, began to think it through. I think that's key. We want to talk about that here this morning in regards to that, in regards to it. But anything else? Any other observations made here looking at this passage of these stories? Some other observations that you might see looking over this? Yes, Neil? Yes. Calls Levi, we had seen in the previous passages, a calling of a fisherman. And just thinking through the background of Levi being called. And I don't know to what extent, but I'm sure there was some that were already following Jesus that struggled with this one. Struggled with why Jesus would call Levi. Why would you bring him into this group? And but the Lord did, and Levi, just like the others, chose to follow. And it was a request here, follow me. And Levi took up that and said, yes, I will follow. Anything else? Anything else standing out to you here from the passage? Yes, Chris. Yes. Yep. Thinking of the man with leprosy, here the man realized his complete inability to cure himself, to be healed in any way. And you see just in his response in that first verse of verse 12 that we looked at, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. If you are willing to do this, I know you can. You see here the heart of one who's recognizing that he is inadequate to fulfill this, to fulfill a healing of any way, but he recognizes one who can and sees a really clear element for just saying, I need to get a hold of Jesus. I need to get a hold of who he is. And I know that if I can make it to him and he's willing, the healing can take place. And you see here a man who is willing to put himself into a position to be healed and to receive, yes, the healing of the leprosy. But I think also the heart of Jesus here, it's interesting to me, and he wants this man to go in and fulfill the law of Moses in regards to it. So you see here the heart of Jesus to fulfill the law, but thinking through the Pharisees of that day, I don't think there was many who came into the temple saying, I've been healed of my leprosy. There probably wasn't many that would do that. And I do think this whole paradigm through this passage, I think Jesus in a lot of ways wanted to confront the Pharisees with their thinking, wanted them to have to wrestle through and beginning here from the very beginning, I think not just a heart to try to create a division, but wants to challenge them with what their spiritual paradigm is. And so he challenges this leper. I want you to go to the temple. But he says at the end of verse 14, for a testimony unto them. And, there's going to be things, I think, even in our life that the Lord's going to do, maybe allowing circumstances to happen, to challenge our thinking. To sometimes as we look at events, we look at them and we think, why did this have to happen in my life? Why does this have to be a part of what I have to do? And, for the leprous man, obviously it was a blessing here, the healing, and that healing was kind of presented, but it really did create these Pharisees are now trying to figure out, who is this Jesus? Where does this power come from? How to reconcile that? And obviously you have different ones going out, different windows of thinking on this, and some are saying, well, he's got the wrong type of power. We don't want to follow him. But there are some very clear examples of those in leadership, Pharisees. You have Nicodemus, who came to Jesus by night. You have Joseph of Arimathea, who in the end takes time to put Jesus' body into his own grave that had been prepared for him. You see some religious leaders here, I believe, through Jesus' purposeful opportunities like this to help confront them with their thinking. And I think this is really significant for us to recognize circumstances in our life really are opportunities that the Lord is challenging our thinking. And how are we perceiving him? And just our thinking in regards to the paradigm that we might have of who Jesus is. Good. Any other observations here from this passage that stand out to you? Observations to you in looking through this passage. We're in Luke chapter 5, looking at verses 12 through 32. And just taking a group time here to discover what is here in this passage and how we might apply it to our personal lives. Yes, Mavis.
Verse 31 and 32.
Okay, yes. And what do you see from that?
We really seek thee the division, but not the division, and that Jesus came not for the righteous, but for the sinners to repent.
Yes. Yep. That is very, very key, and I think really ties to all of the stories that are here, all of what's going on. Anything else? Any other observations that you're seeing here from these verses? Yes, Chris.
Verse 25 and 26, the immediate response is to thank God, to glorify God for their healing. And I think the 10 lepers, 9 of them didn't do it in one day. Sometimes that could relate to us. Maybe sometimes our person want to thank God. Thank a doctor. I think it's a lot of coincidence that I need to thank God first. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Those lepers, 10 were all physically healed. Only one was really spiritually whole and healed.
Yes.
And when in this day and age, physically you're healed, but spiritually, unless God
Mm.
healed,
Yep.
they easily go to God that we
Yes.
spiritually.
Yeah, that's a very good point, that aspect there of that healing that comes through Christ. And this man there, as you mentioned in 25, glorifying God. He departed to his own house glorifying God, and the praise going there to the Lord. Good. Anything else? Any other observations here from this passage in Luke chapter 5? Yes.
You mentioned earlier how Jesus had called Peter and James, Andrew, and they were fishermen, and maybe people thought of them, we read later, people thought of them as unlearned, and, so you have more a normal person, but then you have now Levi or Matthew, this educated, a little bit more well-to-do person, and yet there's still criticism.
No, it really is key through this whole, you see all through Luke 5, you see a lot of different backgrounds going on. And sometimes I think it's easy for us to look at our backgrounds and have reasons for why we can't do certain things, have reasons for why Jesus isn't going to do it for us. Or not even just considering, we just kind of think, well, it's who I am. It's how I've grown up. It's what I'm stuck with. And here, we see very clearly, though, the Lord is looking for people to take steps, looking for people that are willing to be touched by Him. Because ultimately, regardless of their background, regardless if you're a fisherman fishing, and that's what you do, or in Levi's case, seems to be very well off to do. And there's always going to, no matter what background, life stage, circumstances, health reasons that we face, Satan is always going to use some way to bring up doubts and temptations of why we can't accomplish what Jesus is asking us to accomplish. And so, yes, see that very clearly here through these passages, the different backgrounds. I think that's helpful for us in looking through this. Anything else? Anything else that you observe here from this passage? I think looking at verses 18 and 19, says there, "Behold, a man brought in a bed which was taken with a palsy, and they sought means to bring him in and lay him before him, when they could not find by what way they might bring him in because of the multitude." You know, we see here throughout this passage, Jesus is taking time for each of these individuals. We already kind of had looked at that. We had seen the element of Jesus' heart for people. And how about for us today? Are you confident in your life that Jesus is taking time for you? Because He is. You know, in a way that we can't understand humanly, God has time for all of us. I don't have time for everyone, unfortunately. I'm human. There's an element that I can't do that. I can't even do that for my own family. I can't be with them 24/7. But Jesus, for each one of us, is ready and willing to take the time that's needed. And here, you have, really in all of these stories of anyone who received healing, they ultimately came to the realization that Jesus had time for them. Jesus was willing to take that time, willing to touch them, willing to be there for them. And you have the Pharisees wrestling through this, and obviously not willing themselves to admit that they need time with Jesus. They obviously are taking time around Him because they're trying to figure it out, but they don't need that. They aren't the ones who need Jesus' time. They are trying to humanly figure it out. Yes, Hunter?
And also, the Pharisees, they're following Jesus around, and like in 17, it says the Pharisees and doctors, and they're from Galilee, Judea, and Jerusalem. They're all coming, following Jesus. And yet, when Jesus, what they think, and yet Jesus can tell them, He perceives what's in their heart and actually tells them, they still are just trying to figure out ways to not believe.
Yes. Yep. But you still see, even with the Pharisees, Jesus is taking time. He is talking with them. I think really this passage, to me, it stood out during reading through this as I was preparing for this morning. I think there is an element that He wanted the leper to specifically go, so that these Pharisees are beginning to consider their need for Jesus. that they're beginning to consider, is this somebody that's important to me and what I need? And all throughout Jesus' ministry, you see multiple times where he is willing to interact with the Pharisees, challenging them on their thinking. And yes, there's elements that they are the spiritual leaders of the, maybe the communities, and so his interactions with them is helping others to think through the questions. But I do believe Jesus wanted each one, from Peter to Levi, to recognize their need for Jesus just as much as these Pharisees who are here questioning. What here in verses 18 and 19 hindered the group of people from getting to Jesus? What hindered those group with the man who was lame to get to Jesus? What was hindering them? The multitude. Okay.
And so Jesus was in somebody's house.
Yes.
And all these people had come, and they couldn't even
Yep.
get through the crowd.
Yep. There was obviously somebody's home here that Jesus was in, or a building of some sort that they were able to get on top of. You see the uniqueness and of them figuring out how to get him here into this room. But I think for us, this is really significant now, and kind of helping us think through how can this passage apply to our lives. Because here, each one of these stories, from previously looking at Peter in the boat, the leprous man who was healed, we see it specifically here with this lame man. We see it with the Pharisees. Each one had something that would hinder them getting to Jesus. Each one in some way had obstacles, and we see here very clearly, we're looking at it, we've all seen that. We're like, yeah, the Pharisees, obviously, their obstacle would be reasoning. But it's holding them back from recognizing that Jesus, who is willing to take the time for them, who is there for them, who wants them to see their need, and yet still here, those who take the time to follow Jesus, who are healed by Jesus, either physically or spiritually, and really for our own lives spiritually, I want us to consider here in this morning, what is it that is making it difficult for us to get to Jesus in our lives? Is there anything in our lives that we are allowing to be an obstacle of spending time with Jesus, spending time in his presence, and an ultimate sense of getting to Jesus? We know from Scripture, we know from looking just at God's Word that he wants to take time for us. We see from Scripture that if we will draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh to you. And so the matter of God wanting to spend time with us and be there and invest into us is very real. But are there obstacles in our life that we can put up as barriers that would hinder us from really spending that time and hearing from him for our spiritual needs? What are some of the obstacles here in this passage that we see could have hindered these different individuals from either following Jesus or taking that action step of faith in the healing process? What are some obstacles that we see here? Well, multitudes was one. What are some other obstacles here in this passage? Yes, Neil.
Matthew's job
Yeah?
and not wanting to leave.
Yeah? I think so. His job led to a comfortable life, right? Yeah? Now whether he was, doesn't really go into it, whether he was under this weight and guilt of doing what he did, but we can say he had a good job.
And he was hated, though, by his fellow Jews.
Yes? Yeah?
Despised.
Yeah? So following Jesus could have even meant, well, I've got to become a part of this group that's probably going to hate me. It's like Levi's being asked to join a group that he probably knows already is going to hate him. So why would you want to walk with that group? But he recognizes Jesus is the one that's asking, and he sees here the reality of spending time with Jesus, that it becomes very important to him.
And the friends that carried the paralytic to Jesus, okay? You're up there on somebody's roof, but, and you're tearing up their house.
Yeah.
But you have that determination that whatever it's gonna take and whatever we have to do afterwards to make, you know, might have to pay the man to fix the roof, whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Thankfully, I think their roofs weren't quite as integrated as our roofs these days. It might take a little bit to fix if somebody started putting a hole in this roof here and letting someone down, but definitely they were adamant that they needed to get to Jesus. What are some other obstacles in this passage that you might see? We saw Levi's job, see the multitudes. What other obstacles are given here that could have been a hindrance to someone getting to Jesus?